Welcome to the Small Business Evangelist radio show, the show that brings you candid interviews, case studies, and cross-industry insights to help you accelerate your own small business success. Here's your show host and small business evangelist, Jack Schoenberger.
Welcome, everybody. In this episode, I got on the phone and talked with client relationship expert Lynn Thomas. Lynn's expansive client list includes companies such as Allstate Insurance, CVS Pharmacy, Massachusetts Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, just to name a few. During our conversation, Lynn shared why customer experiences are more important than ever in today's connected world, and how to determine what customers and what customer touch points you as a business owner should focus on to immediately generate not only short-term revenue, but to significantly increase the average lifetime value of your clients. I enjoyed my time talking with Lynn, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy this interview as well. Let's go to it.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be speaking with you today, Jack.
Well, Lynn, you help business owners increase both their top line revenues and bottom line revenues by helping them create an extraordinary customer experience. When you work with the businesses, who are the most profitable customers for a company to retain in regards to like lifetime value, and why?
Most companies, there's the 80-20 rule, which 80% of the revenue, and it usually does translate to profit, comes from 20% of their customers. And it's been, if it's not 20-80, it's really close to that. So we really emphasize working with companies, we call these their top customers or their most profitable customers. And by focusing on those customers, they have the largest lifetime value going forward. And that's a way to look at the value of a customer rather than what they would give you in a year. And I think it's some of the accounting systems that have made businesses to really look upon, well, what's this customer worth? Well, a year, but lifetime, which is usually 2 to 3 times the average tenure. And they also, not only the 80-20 are currently generating such the 80% of the revenue and profits, that 5 years from now, Jack, that 80% is responsible for about 82% of the new business that company will have. So they really are the fire or the engine of companies' growth. So that's one of the reasons we focus on them, is that they're the source of current and they're the source of future growth, as well as generating the lifetime revenue streams of those customers.
That's very interesting to me, and I don't know if it's ironic or not, but I just yesterday in the mail I got a book by Richard Koch. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Who had written the book, The 80-20 Principle, and I got his new book called The Breakthrough Principle of 16X, where he talks and does more. It goes more into detail of the math, and talks about how focusing on that 20% that you're talking about can actually and give you a return of like 16x. I'm not finished with the book, but it's timely that I got it before talking to you. Now it makes me want to dig in that much more.
There's a study done by Bain and Company that said they call them your promoters, but many times they are that 20%, that their lifetime value is 7 to 14 times more than your average than a business's average customer. So it's maybe that 14 times is similar to that. But when you look at lifetime revenue, these customers come back more frequently, they buy more, they bring their friends, colleagues, they get positive word of mouth advertising, and that's usually excluding social media. So the impact that they can have on a company's bottom line is substantial.
So there's several different touch points with customers in a company. Why are customer experiences so important to the customers at the key points of when they decide to initially come to a company, then they make that decision to stay, and then eventually they may leave a business. Why are customer experiences so important?
Well, it's years ago. People used to buy more based on features and services and maybe brand. And brand is still important, but it's in a different way. Walker and Company, which is their expert in customer experience, they say by 2020, Jack, most businesses will compete solely on their customer experience. So if you're looking 3 years from now, almost all companies will be competing solely on their customer experience. So the customer experience, improving your customer experience now through 2020 is said to produce the highest return on an investment for a company, more than sales, more than marketing, training, facilities, equipment, and that's by Forrester. And it's also there's great spin-off benefits, because when you create great customer experiences, it has a multiplying impact on many financials. It generates an increase of 32% in cross sales, 33% in higher customer satisfaction, and 42% in retention. And so it has, and retention has an impact, a multiplying impact. So the more companies, it obviously costs companies a lot more to get a new customer than to keep a customer. If what it takes to keep a customer is a great customer experience, which is personalized, which is usually mobile, which is going to delight them, and doesn't mean every single experience they have, but the touch points usually are when they are interacting with a person, and if they're interacting, and usually the quality of that customer experience. We tend to be much more forgiving when technology breaks down than when somebody is rude to us. And so there's many reasons why they come and stay at a company, and that really varies depending on industry. But there's only 2 or 3 reasons. If you think, why do you go to a restaurant that you go to frequently, or why do you go to where you get your car serviced or cleaners, there's probably 1 or 2 or 3 reasons. There's not 20. And so for a company to know what are those key reasons and then build the business around that, not all processes need to be totally streamlined and run perfectly, but the most important ones that for the top 20% are the reasons that they come and they stay and why they would leave are very important. I just want to say something about leaving. 68% of the reason customers leave any business is because of indifference. And it can come down to, so when I work with a company, I'll say something like, so when you're with your clients or your customers, how does indifference show up? What is it that possibly happens that they experience indifference? Because if we're happy with the company, even satisfied, we tend not to leave. But when there's indifference displayed and somebody else is saying, hey, the grass is green over here, we will look the other way. So it's a real key variable. There are reasons for products and price, but we don't live our life based on price. I've never heard anybody, Jack, say, I want to live in the cheapest house and have the cheapest clothing, the cheapest food, the cheapest car. We don't live that way. It's perceived value. So you need to get into the minds and the eyes of your customers and know what's important to them. And as we become more digital and more mobile, technology is showing up as being easy to use, effortless, and that's becoming increasingly important, especially for the millennials.
Can you give me an example when you talk about where you start losing customers, on what companies can do to find out where they're losing their most valuable customers, their top customers, and things that they might be able to do to start plugging those escape points or where they're losing those customers?
Yeah, if you look at the experience that a customer has is like a corridor. They come into the business. There's specific events that happen if they buy a service or product, or they get an invoice, and there's it's really mapping out what they call the customer journey. And through the customer journey, there's some events that are more important than others. And to find out from your top customers what are the most important events and how do they want them to, I call it their brand relationship. So give an example of, I worked with a high-end pharmacy and a compounding service, and they thought that the reasons why their customers came was because their pharmacist, and this is where they make customized medication for their patients or their customers, and they thought, well, they have really great pharmacists, and they do have some of the most talented ones around, and that what they recommend actually works, what the doctor recommends, and how they formulate it, and that they quickly answer their phone, so they're accessible. When we interviewed, and we usually do interviews more than online surveys because I find that the response rate is just so low, and it doesn't really generate a high enough response rate for valid and reliable data. When they walked in the store, within 30 seconds, somebody greeted them, that they worked as a team. Frequently, they would pull. There's also at this place a naturopath physician and a nurse, so they pull them over and they work collaboratively, and that they never oversold. And so once we focused on that, in 9 months, the revenues went up by 20%. So it's really those three behaviors, frontline behaviors. When you find out what they are, and that's what your best customers want, then the best customers love it, and they keep using them. So it's usually aspects that they're not that aware of, else they would have corrected them. So it takes doing some market research with the top clients, and investigating with them what their experiences have been. Why did they come? Why did they stay? Why would they leave? If they're a former customer, we work on getting customers back. Why did they leave? And doing the best to plug up those leaky holes in the customer corridor.
So how do you recreate that? Is it worth it for a business to, hire like a mystery shopper? How do you actually get a good feel for that customer experience, that customer corridor for your clients?
You could do mystery shoppers. We do that as sort of individual follow-ups, and just to sort of double check what we have found is accurate. There has to be some market research. So we would speak to a certain percentage of their top customers and ask them, and they're willing to give the time because they really love this company. They really love this company. And they said, for ABC company, sure. So we make a telephone appointment with them, some in person, most on the phone, and ask the questions. Why did you come? Why did you stay? Why would you leave? What was the most important? If you could change one way ABC company could improve, what would it be? If you were in charge of them, what improvements would you make over the next 12 months? Is there one person that stands out that's giving you extraordinary service? If so, what is it they actually did? So it's really drilling down. If they say that they're professional, Jack, that doesn't do anything. My background, I'm a tax attorney. I was a tax attorney with Arthur Andersen and at Bank of Boston, a private banker and a change agent, and then left there and started my own company. And when I was in private banking, a survey came back and said we had to be more professional. And I thought that meant being out at the client's place as a business. My colleague Carol thought the opposite of being in the office, being accessible when they called. And Carl, fortunately, he thought it meant updating his ties from a small print to a big print. So we were in a meeting, and I said, Carl, you changed your ties. And he said, well, you have to look, we have to be more professional. I said, okay, and how does that have to do with your ties? I said, well, you have to look like you're up to date, you're current, outdated. I said, oh. Gosh, I didn't think it meant that. I thought it meant being out with the clients. Carol said, no, I think it means being here. And we looked at each other and said, they didn't tell us what it was. So for the work we always do, it's always what is the exact behavior the frontline people need to deliver to keep the clients happy and delighted, and that's what you need to keep delivering. And it's really talking to them. They'll tell you, and especially customers who've left, they're sometimes they're the hardest to get a hold of, but the most honest, and they'll say, I'll tell you why I left. And it started 3 years ago, and they'll tell you 1 event, 2 events, usually 3 to 4 events, and then they leave. There's a lot of great data out there. I think it makes much more sense to have somebody on the outside calling with their permission, and the company sends an email or a letter or a phone call, whichever way they think is best, and saying that our company, Thomas Consulting, would be contacting you, blah, blah, blah. And so give them permission, and we don't call out of the blue. It's scheduled. It's like a meeting. And clients have great stories. I can totally understand why they behave the way they do and why they're so fiercely loyal because of the extraordinary experiences. And this ABC company wasn't even aware of some of the great experiences, so they weren't utilizing the testimonials to get more clients like those clients, even though they wanted them, but they had not gathered that kind of client intelligence that's so important in this day and age.
So for companies out there that aren't taking these steps, how costly is it as far as when they go through customer churn on an annual basis?
Yeah, customer churn. If you're losing more than 5% of your customers or employees annually, and those are some of your best customers, there's definitely that can be improved. Customer acquisition costs, depending on the industry, are 7 to 13 times more to retain a current customer than to attract a new one. And when employees leave, in order to replace somebody and get them up to that same training level as the employee who left, it's like 300 to 500% of the departing employee's compensation. So it's just huge cost to do that. And when customers and employees leave, they take on average 2.6% of a company's gross revenue each month, because some people will follow them. And talented employees are harder to find, expensive to attract and retain. And then you lose the future lifetime value, the cross sales, the referrals, and also the longer customers are with you, it's a lower cost to serve them over time because they know how you work and they understand it, and they're not like a brand new customer. So it's extremely costly. It's said every year there's 180 billion changes in companies by all of us in America, and by the cost of taking a customer out of the system, putting a new customer in the system, et cetera, is just really extraordinary. And if companies would focus more on their current customers, who are the most profitable, finding out what they want and find a way to give it to them profitably, they'd be much more profitable. And they do need new customers, but the emphasis on new customers in this society, I think, is disproportionate to the profit they bring. And it's also, Jack, that there's, customer retention, customer experience, what are the hard numbers on financials that point to that? And it's hard to do, and it's not agreed by all companies how to do that. So when you want to point to sales, everybody can agree on what sales are. But, I was working with one large company where they had spent $350 million to attract new customers, and they lost $333 million in customers. So they paid $17 million to get customers in the door, brand new customers who are more likely to leave the first couple of years. They lost tenured customers, and it finally dawned on senior management, it's like, this is just crazy. We're just losing as many as we're getting in, and we're paying more to get them in, and they're not as loyal, and they're not going to buy as much, and we lost a lot of positive word of mouth advertising, et cetera. So it's when we do that with clients, and I sit down and say, how many what percentage of clients do you lose every year? What's your average client worth or your top client worth? And multiply that, and then what's the average lifetime revenue, and multiply that out and times it by 2 or 3, because by focusing on those clients and personalizing their service, you can keep them longer, and it's a pretty extraordinary number even for an individual client.
For people who are listening right now, business owners that are listening right now, and unfortunately, like some of the clients I've worked with in the past, they don't have a good grasp on even some of those numbers that you're talking about, client acquisition costs, lifetime value. What's the best first step they can take to start improving the customer experience? Is it getting a handle on the numbers, or what would you recommend as that first step?
Well, I think we follow a lot Bain & Company's principles of customer loyalty. So you got to define a narrow and attractive group of customers that the company can serve better than its competitors. So that usually is the 20%. It may not be for some businesses, but who are the customers you want to replicate and duplicate, over and over? If my whole business could be customers like these, those are the customers I want. So because it's by going narrow and to really overserve those customers that you create a bigger company. Because you can't be everything to everybody and treat everybody. It's like mediocre service. You get average service. So first identifying them, then getting feedback and finding out how you can change their pain points and making their touch points very positive. And what can you do to personalize your experience with them? And then find ways to win their loyalty, especially the emotional commitment to a brand. And then all of that flows where they will spend more over time, cost less to serve, tell friends and colleagues. They're also the people, Jack, who will invest in your company. So if you want a company client advisory group, they're the best to get on because they're really invested in your business. It's like if the company is a square, these are customers who are a square. Some are triangles and some are circles, and they don't fit that well. But these clients fit perfectly. They are thrilled to help you find more clients if you ask them. And so we've had great success in helping to expand that 20% to 30, 35, and even as high as 40% over a period of 2 to 3 years by really focusing on delivering superior customer experiences and a relatively frequent feedback loop. Not lots of questions, but that could be done electronically if they're expected. You can get many. There's many companies where they have once a month. There's a group of customers where they'll just send out a 2 or 3 minute survey, and they've agreed to fill that out so they can know how the experiences are landing as they change them. So it's not that expensive to do. But once you get the information and it's valid and reliable, and the client intelligence from the right clients, then you know what to do. And, I remember Lynn Schlesinger said, and I repeated it earlier, where she said, who are your best customers? Find out what they want and find a way to give it to them profitably. And I think so many companies have moved far away from that as they've grown. They don't know individually who are their best customers or even segmented. What do they really want specifically down to a service, a product, the experience around it, expectations, etc., and then find a way to give it to them profitably. And, all the expectations for customers are being driven really by Amazon, Uber, Starbucks, so not by that individual industry.
All great information. So if people want to get hold of you, Lynn, what's the best way for them to get hold of you to find out more?
They could email me or call. Phone number is 781-899-4210, and we're in the Boston area. And email is my name, Lynn, Lynn Thomas, at Thomas Consulting. wins.com. So Lynn Thomas at thomasconsultingwins.com. And thanks for the privilege of speaking with you, Jack.
No, it's been great. I'm going to take that information also as we syndicate the show. Wherever there's places for the description, I'll make sure those links and that information is in the bottom. If is there anything else that you want to leave as a last, note to our listeners before you go?
Yeah, I would say another place to start is look at the quality of your employee experience, because if your employees are not really happy and engaged, it's going to be hard to get get your customers or clients happy and engaged. So there's something called the service profit chain, and it's a relationship between employees and customers, and how all that reflects on retention rates and profits. And your companies are only as strong as the weakest link. So for many organizations, it's really not valuing the talent with the customers, with their employees, as much as they really need to be. But that's just an FYI if somebody wants to start. And we wind up usually working with many companies where we start with the customers, we'll work a little with the employees, do some coaching, maybe some training, and we're able to help implement the changes. As I find most companies, they don't have an implementation team, so we're able to help them with that. But it's easier than it may seem, and it makes the job place much more enjoyable. And I'd be very happy to talk about results with specific companies in their industry, and if we're able to help, it would be my privilege to do so.
That's great, Lynn. I appreciate that. And for any listeners that want to get hold of Lynn to talk with her more and to take advantage of the wisdom that she shared today, please go to thomasconsultingwins.com. Again, that's thomasconsultingwins.com. And you'll have all the contact information to be able to reach out to Lynn and also see what all she has for offerings as far as not only consultations, but also some keynotes and key training that she provides. So that's going to wrap it up for today's episode. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and take care.
You've been listening to the Small Business Evangelist radio show with host Jack Schoenberger. To find out more about resources mentioned during this show, or to let us know you're interested in being a featured guest on an upcoming episode, please visit thesmallbusinessevangelist.com.